Hi everyone and welcome back, and today going to be doing a bit more work to the little dino drawing that I was doing in the previous stream. So what I've done is, as you saw in the previous stream, I showed you how to build up the design, what to think about the design, and how to create a final image from it. And in this case we were combining animals like parrots, goats and reptiles to create the dino, or Dino. So after all my drawings and all of that sketch build-ups, I've got my final result and I've put this onto some Bristol board paper because this is a really good paper for using markers. I'm going to have a go at colouring it in. I hope the picture's okay for you guys because I'm having a little trouble with lighting right now. Actually bear with me because I can see a little bit of shadow. If I put too much light onto the paper it bounces back, so this is a tricky one. Then I get too much shadow. Can't win. Right, anyway, on to drawing. So today I'm going to be using Copic markers, my favourites. And you can see this time I've actually left the drawing less detailed than the actual original sketch, and this is because once I've got the markers down I'm going to be coming through with the pencil again and probably a very fine micro pen just to bring in the detail. So Copic wise, what am I going to go for? I'm not going to match the Pokemon designs colours exactly because I want this to actually look more natural and more realistic. So I'm going to start off on the head part and the mane and the horn. I'm just going to move that reference book back a bit. And I'm going to be using the C grade pen, so C1, 3, 5, 7 and such, and that's going to be to build up all the scale detail. So starting with the lowest colours, C0 in this case, I'm just going to build up some layers. And because this is pencil down already, I'm not too bothered about if I go over it. So in the last video I explained that instead of being fur on the dino's head, I felt that it would be better off to be scales, and like a scale mutation, because if it was fur then surely if there was a breeze then that would blow up and the little animal would be able to see. But in the description it clearly says that he's blind. And of course if there's scales over your eyes they're not going to move and they would inhibit the vision completely. Because I can't imagine this animal at this stage would have been born without eyes, because when it evolves into the High Dragon it certainly does have eyes. At least I think it does. So as you can see I'm just putting the C3 in areas that I think will be having the most shadow. My C3 seems to have dried up slightly, so I'll blend a lot of that back in with the C1. And the way you tell if a marker's dry is if the nib up here starts to go really pale against the rest of it, then that's telling you that not enough ink is getting through to there. And I bet I don't have one. I've only got C1, so that's going to be on my next order sheet. And if you're wondering how long I've had my Copics for, I've probably had them for about 5 years. And that's constant use, so that'll give you a good idea of how long Copics can last for before you need to start refilling them. That's why they do work out at pretty good value. So I'm just putting some C1 in there just as a mid-tone. I hope you guys can see this image. Like I say, I am having a little trouble with lighting. Right, so now I'm coming in with a C5 and then I'm going to go over that with the C1 and that'll tone it back down. So I'm going to leave that to dry a little bit because any more detail I want it now to start. I'll be bleaching out and adding more detail. So on to the body. Now on the Pokemon books it's shown as a really deep blue and there's also meant to be red detail within the main area, which I would guess would be scratches and such. So those we can add in once the greys are dry, because if I add in pinks and reds onto wet grey it's going to bleed out a bit too much and that'll probably have a negative effect. Now as I said, I want to go for a slightly more realistic look. So she opening up her Copic boxes. And so I'm not going to go blue, but I'm going to try and get a very light greyish blue. So to do this I'm going to be using underlays and overlays of blues within the greys. In fact, B41 is a good starter. And for this I'm actually, because I'm going to be covering a larger area, I'm going to be using the chisel tip. Even though it's a chisel you can still get into all of the small areas. I'm just going to look at areas that I know are going to have shadow in them. The reason I've left a little bit of the throat open is because where the epiglottis, the airway and or the tubes are on the front of your throat, think about your Adam's apple, that has constant movement. If that's trapped underneath a set of scales, heavy set ones, it's not going to be able to move quite so well. So I've just kept a kind of little open area there. It would still have denser skin around there for protection, but I've not put any heavy scales onto that bit. Also, even though the scales are random because of the positioning and they've been knocked about by being walked into things, I've tried to keep a few small scales in there so it acts more like a chainmail. Now I'm going to come through with a T2. T2. You'll note this is quite a different grey. This is a toner grey. So once again, I'm just going to look for the areas of shadow. So as you can see, it's looking a little bit scruffy. I'll admit that. So I'm going to be using a, let's see, let's go for a B0000, I think. Slightly different blue. Oh, blimey, my pens are getting dry. You can hear the squeaking. Squeak! I'm just using what's left of this pen to act as a overlay. Just to get rid of any of that really stark white. And it'll blend the colours that are already down, make them a bit more smooth. So it's B... Actually, yes, I do have a replacement for that one, so I can refill that today. Leave that one out for refill. So as you can probably see, that's already started to blend that in. But you'll notice that there's not much difference now between the grey in the main and the grey on the body. But there's that bluish tint there. So then with the T1, I'm going to start to pick out a bit more of the details, so less just random shadows. And I'm going to start tightening up the detail. Now this is probably a bit weird, you've seen me put the T2 down already, which is darker than T1, but you'll notice right now that T1 seems to be coming up even darker. That's because when I put the B0000 over the other colours, that bleached them out. So it pushed them back into the paper and made them more opaque. And you can, when you're doing one pen colouring, you can actually leave a light pen to dry and then come back over it and it'll be a much darker shade. So it's all about kind of knowing how to get the best of the blends out of the pens. And this will settle down again, but it's giving me a much better area to work on and more definition. But it's not too dark that it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Making sure that I've got shadow underneath those scales. So now we're coming back to This time we're going to go to T4. And for this one we're literally just going to be looking for the absolute darkest areas, because this is all going to be blended down with the blue again to make it much more subtle. But for now I don't mind it being quite a hard shadow. Sorry if you can hear rattling, by the way, it's my Copic holders. Okay, so the next colour I'm going to use is B91, and this is almost like a darker version of B41. Squirrel. Sorry. There's a squirrel. And when I'm going over with this one, I'm making sure that I'm going into those greys so that blends neatly in. So we're still kind of trying to stay with the idea that the animal does have a blue tinge, just not as bright and garishly blue as the cartoon. B91 is more of a blue that you would use if you were doing, say, a drawing of a kingfisher or bright birds. Now I know humans don't have many prisms or thingamabobs in their eyes, so we can't see the spectrum of colours that, say, birds can see. So I suppose in a sense Deino cartoon version would probably be what a bird would see if they saw the animal as a real animal. So whereas we see much duller colours, the birdies would see the really bright strong colours, and that helps them in their little day-to-day lives, identifying a good looking mate through to who's got the best feathers, so you know they're defending a good territory and they're very strong because they can keep themselves looking nice and neat. I'm leaving a few white areas just to keep the highlights there. So this is a funny debate, what colour were dinosaurs? A lot of the fossil finds are now showing reddish browns and quite dull muted colours, which is quite a surprise because since a lot of them do seem to derive from birds and have the same build and everything as birds, you would expect to find some maybe in the blue spectrum. But I'm not sure if the proteins and such that make up the blue colour in feathers would be as strong as the red ones. Who knows, we might find a bright blue T-Rex yet. Now please have him thumbnail on YouTube, wouldn't he? He loves his blue dinosaurs. Right, so while that's drying and settling, I'm going to go back to the main. And this time we're going to change greys, and we're going to go over to the W family, and that's the warm greys. Going to keep it very light though, so probably going to just use a W3. So she's trying to find it. Yep. And this is just the W families of the blues are really handy for natural colours, especially when drawing animals. This is just to make it more distinguished from the body greys and the shadows. But I'm only adding a tiny bit all around each of the scales. Now on my drawing, my pencil lines, as I'm adding the ink, I can still see them because these are very light Copics colours, so they're quite opaque. But if I was to go darker, I would probably end up just seeing like a reflective line where the graphite catches the light. So if you're going to put pencil down first with a Copic drawing, try and keep it light, and then that way if you want the pencil to come through, you can go back over it after you've done all your inking. So now coming through with W1 just to smooth that out. Actually I might not. Have I got nothing? I've got nothing. You'll see I don't use the point of the pen a lot, I actually use the side of it, especially when laying down quite a lot of colour. This one's also nearly dry. Squeak. Now I'm actually going to get a W5 and then I'm going to use a W0 to bleed that out. So this is tiny bits of this. Once again, just add definition. Because I've got the cold greys and the neutral greys down already, it's going to add more textured detail. Then blending in just slightly with the W0. I've got any replacement W0. I haven't got W00. Right, changing that because I haven't got enough W0, I'm going to have to go W00. I think Copics are going to be, Copic refills are going to be on my Christmas list this year. So I can go all over these and that'll smooth all of that down. now we're going to take a W2, if I've got enough, yeah, and just push out a couple of those little scales. W00 does have a much stronger bleach effect than some of the other colours, so if you don't feel confident in just putting a blender straight onto a dark, say W5, you can use the W00 and then the blender. And that should bleach that out really well. So now I'm going to go onto the T2 and we're going to go back over the body. So I'm going to start by going over the shadows. And just to define them a bit more. Next it's going to be B91 and B41 combined. So B91 I'm just applying into those shadows again. This time I'm being a bit bolder in where I'm putting it. Then I'm going to go back onto the main and just start adding in the final details. So once again I'm going to come in with the W5. In fact I'm going to apply a little bit of the W5 to the feet. Now when looking at this Pokemon's feet, I hypothesise that in fact it's more hoof-like, because if you note there's one solid toe at the front and then two tiny toes. So it's almost like a kangaroo's in structure, but if it was more hoof-like, then it would explain why the animal is said to be very strong and very fast. And if you've ever been headbutted by a goat, as I have, you will understand that. Hoofed creatures have got power behind those little footses. The headbutting of the goat, basically, I was at a county show, and one of the exhibitors was a local children's farm. They'd bought pygmy goats with them, and I'm very small anyway, and I was quite young at the time, and their exhibit with the pens and stuff wasn't very well built, and the pygmy goat, one of them in particular, squeezed through and went for a run straight towards where the hounds were being walked. And it would not have ended well, because the shows allow dogs in them anyway. So you got all these dogs walking around, and hounds, the lot. Absolute chaos it would have been. So I made a dive and I grabbed onto this pygmy goat, and I actually managed to lift it up and carry it back to the pen. Problem was, I couldn't get it over the top of the pen because I was shorter than the height of the pen, and as I went to lift it, it swung its head straight into my head, well, side of my head, and I saw stars. It was literally like being hit by a hammer. And another chap quickly ran over and managed to help me get the little darling back over into the enclosure, and the organisers were told to secure the pens much better. And I ended up with quite a headache for the rest of the day. So yeah, even pygmy goats can nearly knock you out. But it's the speed and the way they can twist their necks in such an amazing way, you don't expect it. And then ka-dunk. And they're such agile animals as well. You think goats live up on cliffs, mountains. In Pakistan, they have to outrun animals like snow leopards up sheer cliff walls. Definitely check out any documentaries about that, because it's absolutely stunning to watch. And that's why I kind of felt that the Pokemon Deino was a bit like that. It's like a super goat. It's got the power to ram into anybody and knock them out, and that way it can always ensure that it's going to get its food. So I'm just going to define some of the body shadows by coming in with the C3. No, it can't come in C3 because I haven't got enough C3. Whoops. C5 and C1 it's going to have to be. So for C5 I'm going to only have to put a tiny bit down because it's a very strong colour. I'm using the C5 on the body because I've used blues in there. Okay, so that is probably going to be it, and you can see how fast that was. And the reason it's that fast, so she's just adding some T1 to the ground, is because with the Copics you can just get layers down so fast and the ink moves beautifully. So now what I can do is I can come through with a fine line pen and really go to town with any ink detail. And then if I want to, I can push back any shadows. If I use the Copic pens, the Copic fine liners, or the Mars Micron pens, you know, the orangey cream ones, I won't have any problem with reworking the Copics once they've dried. I haven't tested out the De Lamroni markers on Copics yet, and in all honesty I'm probably not going to, because when you've got a drawing that you're happy with, you don't really want to risk experimenting on it. So yeah, this is roughly how I would approach colouring in this little Pokemon to make it look far more realistic and give it a more realistic colours and such. So I hope that's helped inspire you to have a go and have a bit of a colour in. If you don't have Copics, I get the feeling Crayola do some quite good markers, or possibly even the Spectrum Noir markers, which are alcohol based again, so you can get really nice blendability, but the colour charts for them are quite different. They're much brighter and stronger, so you will get some very interesting results, to say the least. Now, if you really do like seeing this sort of stuff, please remember you're always welcome to subscribe to keep up to date with any changes or any new stuff that's happened. And if you really want to learn more about the Copics, I really do recommend doing one of the courses available. There's normally regional Copic instructors that you can go and see and join classes for. It's well worth it, well worth saving up the pennies. Or if you like, there's a few really good tutorials on YouTube, of course, and there's on Facebook there are several good classes that you can join, and people will give hints and tips and things like where the best or the cheapest place to buy Copics is. So there we go. And then what I do is, before I ink, I always let that dry. I want to show you this paper. It wasn't Bristol board, it's something else. I'm not entirely sure which one. I think it's a Ryman's cardstock, but flipping it over, I've got a nice amount of bleed through there, but it's not too heavy. So you can see where I've put the most ink and where the lighter bit is. Now in fact, if I wanted to, I could put a pencil sketch around that, and that would be a drawing on its own. So whenever you've done a drawing with markers, have a look at the other side and see what results you've got, because you can find that the result on the other side of the page is sometimes as good as the one that you'd actually just done. And it gives you an idea of what the image would look like if it had less ink and was more bleached out. So I hope that's helped to inspire you to pick up some pens, a pencil and some paper, and have a go, get creative, enjoy, and may I wish you all the best and happy drawing.